everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to do some box office reporting for Transformers Rise of the Beasts on its opening weekend of release in cinemas, covering Friday the 9th to Sunday the 11th of June 2023. So we'll get straight into the numbers then. And the latest Transformers movie, the 6th overall within the live action franchise, took the #1 spot in US cinemas with around just over $60.5 million in its opening weekend, pushing the previous holder of the #1 spot, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, to #2. Internationally, the movie took in $110 million to give it an overall global tally of around $170 million. So do these figures represent a somewhat rejuvenation of the franchise after the declining numbers of recent installments of both Bumblebee and Transformers The Last Knight? Well, I'm not sure that it does. I think the numbers overall are decent, nothing truly earth-shattering, and this was probably to be expected given the lower numbers of the recent movies. We're far long gone from the high days when these movies were making $800 million to $1 billion worldwide, and I think the declining interest of these movies was down simply to the lack of quality, and eventually audiences grew tired of the same style and tone, the fact that the movies were too overlong, the juvenile humour, the constant overtones in terms of sexuality and also race, the constant incoherency in terms of the action sequences, the ongoing product placement, and the fact that we had far too many human characters at the expense of the Transformers themselves. And audiences just grew fatigued, which is something that will eventually happen with most franchises the longer that they go on, especially if the quality isn't as good. And we look at both Rise of the Beasts and Bumblebee, and they try to play far more on the nostalgia by adapting the more classic aesthetic of the 80s animated series. But for me and a lot of people, looking at them overall, they just look and sound exactly the same as the Michael Bay movies, not really offering anything different that we haven't seen already. So I'm not really surprised that we haven't seen bigger numbers in terms of this opening weekend. The movie has performed fine overseas, especially in China, when it's taken over 40 million. And to be honest, the Transformers movies always perform big in China, and Rise of the Beasts will need to rely on continued success overseas if it wants to be considered a hit. Especially as June is a very highly competitive month, we have a lot of high profile releases coming up in the next 4 to 5 weeks. Now I'd say that we're probably looking at around 500 to 600 million tops for this movie at best. Now will that be enough to convince Paramount and Hasbro to carry on with the franchise going forward? We will wait and see. They'll certainly have to keep the budget down if they want to carry on making more films. And this is something that could be said for all of these big massive blockbusters going forward. But overall, decent, not outstanding results so far for Transformers Rise of the Beasts. We then quickly look at Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which dropped 54% in its second weekend of release in the US to gross around 55 million. It's overall now taken 225 million in that territory. Globally, it now has an overall total of 389 million, surpassing the first movie's take of 384 million. And we expected this and mentioned this last week, that due to the high opening weekend numbers, it wouldn't be too long before the sequel outgrossed the original, which is exactly what has happened. And I think overall the film is looking good for around 600 to 700 million worldwide. So it isn't quite going to be the second $1 billion movie of the year after Super Mario Bros., but it's still a great result for the animated sequel, and no doubt about it will get further installments surrounding Miles Morales and the Spider-Verse for sure. We then look at The Little Mermaid, which drops down to #3 in US cinemas, dropping 45% for a $22 million take. The film has now grossed over 228 million in the US cinemas. Globally, the film now stands at just around 414 million. So it's still looking locally at around maybe 600 million when it's all said and done, which no matter how much you swing it, is going to be seen as a big disappointment, especially when you look at the previous Disney live action remakes that all made over $1 billion, and especially that $250 million budget. And it will further validate the argument against race swapping iconic characters or franchises for these recent reboots. We'll then talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which continues to bring good news for Marvel, only dropping 34% in the US in its 4th weekend of release to take 7 million. Its US tally now stands at a very impressive 335 million. Globally, it's now crossed over $800 million worldwide, and it's not too far away now from the 859 million grossed by Volume 2 back in 2017. So if Disney can keep it within cinemas for a couple of weeks longer, may even go to outgross the first sequel, which was looking very unlikely when we were looking at the opening weekend numbers. So once again, it's a great win for Guardians of the Galaxy and also Marvel, and proves once more that if you concentrate on the quality, that Marvel can still produce the big box office results. Now it's far less news for Fast X, which continues to struggle domestically in the US, only taking $5 million for an overall tally of around $138 million within this territory. Globally, the film now stands at $653 million. So it's very unlikely that this film is now going to get to $1 billion. In fact, it will do well to get to 800 million, which seems very unlikely, especially now that the film has recently been released digitally as well. And we'll probably expand on this overall underperformance in a separate video. But again, it gives much pause for thought considering the massive budget surrounding this film, which has been speculated to be around $300 to $340 million. The fact that it's barely going to gross more than the recent installment, Fast 9, which managed to gross $720 million. And that was very much when we were in early stages of coming out of the pandemic. So this is not good numbers any way you look at it. And I think overall, if they do have plans to continue with this franchise, Fast 11 should very much be the last installment overall. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings on the recent box office weekend concerning Transformers Rise of the Beasts in its opening days of release. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are there any other movies coming up within the future that you think can surpass these recent releases? Or are we going to see a further downturn in profits and further disappointments as what we've currently seen, certainly with the likes of Fast X and The Little Mermaid? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any other further topics or movies or television series that you'd like to see me talk about within this channel, then also drop me suggestions within the comments and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on those topics within the future. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves and I will see you very, very soon.